Hello, I'm Terry David Mulligan. This is the podcast called Mulligan Stew. This is where it begins, right here, right now. But it will be about music, food, wine, and film. That's the intersection. We're going to start with music, and we're going to start with a very famous name and voice and face. Nardwuar, the human serviette. It's almost impossible to define who he is or what he is and what he does. He's a broadcaster. He's a musician. He's a really good interviewer, but it's a style of interview that can appear almost confrontational, but people love talking to him. When the New York Times starts to write about you, you know you've made a mark in music. Just for the record, his real name is John. He transforms himself into this character, Nardwuar, the human serviette. And as soon as the transformation happens, all hell breaks loose.
The mic in their face, they will talk.
Hi,
Yeah.
I have my cans on now.
Check, 1, 2, 3.
Checking my cans. Well, I'm Terry David Mulligan, and he is Nardwuar, the human serviette. And so immediately there are people in the audience going, what is a serviette? I don't understand. I mean, if you come from south of the border, they don't know what a serviette is. And so let me just tell them it's sort of like a clean version of toilet paper. No, it's what you get when you go to a diner, like say the Tomahawk, and you order the Yukon breakfast, and then they give you a little napkin. That's what it is, right?
Exactly. Who am I? Nardwuar, the human serviette, from CITR FM 102, Cable 102, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And you are Terry David Mulligan.
Yes, sir, I am, with my all three names. Yes.
Thank you for having me in.
You're welcome, man. It would happen more often, except...
it took you a year.
It took you a year because last year something happened to you, fateful.
Yes, I went to the Mint Records Christmas party, and unfortunately, I had a stroke. So I was out of action for a little while. However, I did find out that, believe it or not, I had the same stroke that Biff Naked had, that Bret Michaels had, of Poison, a PFO closure. It was caused by a hole in the heart. I had a broken heart, Terry David Mulligan, and they repaired it, and here I am today.
Was there something, looking back on it, John, that you knew there was something wrong with your ticker?
No, nothing. And in fact, the PFO closure, there was a hole in my heart for years. Some people, it closes. Some people, it doesn't close. And it didn't close, and it caused these problems. So it's ready to go off at any of our encounters that we have had over the years, Terry David Mulligan.
Nard, did the bacon on the Yukon breakfast, did that help?
I have cut back on that. And I am honored that my picture is on the Tomahawk Barbecue's mantelpiece.
Let me see. This is just about your stroke at the Astoria pub. That's correct, sir, right? The Mint Records. Did you see the report? Have you seen the posting of the report, the actual screen report? Have you seen it?
Altered level of consciousness.
Yes. Remarks, confused male.
Just another night at the Astoria.
I don't understand. How is that any different from what you were normally when you walked in?
Exactly. Like people are like, what the hell is different?
By the way, Joey Keithley got a BC Hall of Fame star. Did you see that on the side?
I was there right beside.
Wow.
I'm right for that event.
Where'd
that
they
was
put the
amazing.
star? Where'd they put it?
They put it right beside a guy that was totally into Bhangra. So they acknowledged Bhangra, which is cool, before punk rock, but still like Bhangra and punk rock together.
But where in the city? Where on the sidewalks? Is it
right outside the Commodore Ballroom.
Oh, wonderful. Fantastic. Now, if you were to get a star, which you will.
Do you have one, TDM?
Yes, I do.
Where's yours?
Well, initially it was in front of the Commodore Ballroom, but then they repaved. They did the sidewalk again, and I have no idea where they put me.
Who is it beside, though? Hugh Pickett?
No, it was beside Bruce Allen and Bryan Adams.
That is pretty high placing.
Yes, it was. Now, here's the thing. If you, and when you get that star, Nardwuar, the human serviette, where would you like it to go if you could?
Well, I think probably on another street, probably outside of the Penthouse Cabaret.
Nice.
Which Aaron Chapman has written all those great books. And he has a new book all about the Clark Park Gang, but he wrote about the Penthouse Cabaret, and I've interviewed him quite a few times.
But they're not putting stars in front of the Penthouse, are they?
Not yet, but I would love to have it there. Okay. By the time I get a star, it will be outside of the Penthouse.
What kicked this in? Well, I had been asking for an interview with you for quite some time, and your people kept coming back saying, no, not now. He's recovering. He's recovering.
Well, your people being me.
You. Yeah. And I was thrilled when you said, yeah, let's do this. And then in conjunction with the Evaporators' new album, Ogopogo Punk, and it's out now. It
is out now. And what is really interesting is there's a connection between Ogopogo Punk and you directly. In fact, this gentleman right here on the bottom right, if you see his picture on the bottom right, his name is Nick on the bottom right.
Yep.
Nick, he is now in Evaporators. He is called Nick Thomas. And his sister is?
Danny Thomas?
Jackie Thomas, who did the cover of your book.
No.
Mulligan Stew.
Wow.
So there is a connection. Nick Thomas is in Evaporators, and his sister, Jackie Thomas, did the cover of your book, Mulligan's Stew.
He's practically part of the family.
Exactly. An amazing connection. And I must say, thank you also, Terry, for getting me the Snoop hat. Remember Snoop Dogg did a movie. So, could you explain that? Soul Plane, right?
Well, here's the thing. I was doing movie television as part of my job with Much West. And a couple of times a week, I would go on a film set and we would lay in wait and we'd set up a couple of chairs and whoever were the stars or who we wanted to talk to, we'd wait for them and they'd come and they'd sit down. We have a great talk. Well, I was going to do the Snoop movie, and every time I go by that corner lot, I think of you and him and that day. It was in a school, if I'm not, or a community center, one of the two. And I had said to the people doing the movie, I'm going to bring someone special with me. Well, who is it? It's Nardwuar, the human Serviette. What? And what is he going to do? He's not going to make any trouble, is he? I said, no, he's just he wants to talk to Snoop. So they were not convinced. They thought you were going to really rip it up and you were going to piss off their star and he'd walk off the set and stuff like that. So how did it go that day?
Amazing. From the year 2000 till now, the bromance started. You started, TDM. That was actually on the set of Bones in Vancouver, but you got me a Soul Plane autographed Snoop Doggy Dogg hat. Hello, motherfucker, Nardwuar, crazy motherfucker. And you got that for me signed, and you brought it back from L.A.
He said it on camera too, didn't he?
It was, I'm not sure, but what's like an amazing promo item? It was like a Soul Plane hat signed to me by Snoop Dogg. That was amazing. I was just curious. You have quite a few signed artifacts, don't you? Like, how does that Snoop thing rate?
But here's the thing, Nard. I mean, I spent time with Jimi Hendrix and The Experience. Why didn't I get them to sign something that day?
Well, did he mention more about playing in Vancouver? I know you were kind of flustered that day.
Very flustered.
Yeah, but did he mention more about playing or growing up in Vancouver? Because you interviewed Hendrix, and did he mention much about Vancouver?
Well,
aside from that one little shout out to Vancouver.
When he started to talk about schools that he went to, I went, what the hell? What? How does he know that? And then I realized that there was part of his life that I didn't even know about. It really bothered me, something fierce. But I tapped down as hard as I could. I find it hard to watch the interview because I'm a better interviewer now. I would have had much more fun with it. And Noel Redding was on the end. I would love to have talked to him some more. And I simply... I could have done so much better.
However, you did go to England with the Guess Who.
Yes, I did.
In fact, they even wrote a song for you. What is that song? The Guess Who Blues, the TDM Blues.
It's something about, actually, I think the line is TDM, I don't dig him no more. I think I had romanced his girlfriend away from him or something.
And you are Terry David Mulligan. Mulligan, and you are listening to Roundhouse Radio and maybe Nardwuar.
And I'm Terry David Mulligan, and this is Roundhouse Radio, 98.3 in Vancouver. He is Nardwuar, the human Serviette, and you can find him
on CITR in Vancouver.
Thank you, man. Now, here's the thing. I saw this. It was in the newspaper today. The actual. Do you read a newspaper anymore?
I do indeed. Okay, fine.
This says punk collection ablaze on the Thames. Don't get nostalgic about punk music, and if you do, don't go collecting memorabilia from the glory days of the Sex Pistols. That seemed to be the message Saturday when the son of Sex Pistols manager Malcolm McLaren and fashion designer Vivienne Westwood set fire to an extensive collection of punk memorabilia on a boat in central London. Joe Corey claimed his collection of clothes, posters, and other music-related items was worth £5 million. That's, Corey told the crowd watching his self-styled protest on the river, punk was never, ever, ever meant to be nostalgic. What do you think about that, Nard?
It's driving up prices. I am so angry. Yes, I am a collector scum. So the son of Vivienne Westwood and Malcolm McLaren, did you interview any of them?
No.
I did know that you did interview Joe Strummer.
I did.
Who was really into the punk scene. He came to your house, right?
He came to my house, and I had, my back was out, and my dad was there with me, and he sang Christmas songs beside the Christmas tree. He did 3 tunes for the camera, and he walked out, and my dad said, "What was that? I have no idea. What just happened?" I said, "Well, we were just doing a Christmas special." Joe Strummer, great guy.
Free the files. Where is that footage?
I don't know, man.
Free the files.
They're involved back east.
You don't keep any records of anything you do,
no, but
Terry?
I said everything was sent to the CBC in Toronto, and everything was sent to the Much Music in Toronto. It's all back there somewhere.
Free the files. Like you had Joe Strummer at your house, but I guess kind of like the ground zero of punk is Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne Westwood, and their son burned all this memorabilia
it would drive you
on
crazy.
the Thames. It drove prices right up. I could not believe it.
What have you got for Sex Pistols stuff?
I only have, actually, I do have a Sex Pistols 8-track, which is pretty amazing, which I paid $25 for. But still, the Sex Pistols on 8-track, that is kind of weird to have like the Sex Pistols on 8-track. They were still making 8-tracks to that day.
And you have an 8-track player?
I don't. I'm like a total collector scum, so I keep it all sealed. And I look to my right, or actually, I look to my left, and I look to your right, and you are kind of a collector scum because you have the first Nardwuar record. I am honored. I am honored. Can you explain?
I have.
Oh, God,
what
my
I have
mom...
is Nardwuar, the Human Serviette presents. What year was this?
1989. Oh, God, my mom's on Channel 10, and you still have it, Terry.
The Vindicators, the Gruesomes, the Mighty Squirrels.
I am surprised that you haven't sold that off. Like, thank you so much for keeping that.
Oh, excellent. I got a Rash, the Evaporators.
You have...
Still Bound.
Wow. Total collector scum action.
I have Liberace Unplugged.
What is the closest you got to Liberace?
Never.
What is it close? Like, you must have been in
Little
Vegas.
Richard.
Like, Little Richard. Way back when?
Little Richard.
What was he like way back when?
Oh, he was crazy. If you just went with him and tried not to do a normal interview, just a conversation, he was much better. It wasn't very good with
Did
the
he
Q&A.
have lots of handlers?
Yeah.
Who is the most security that you've encountered? Like, for instance, when I interviewed James Brown, they had Snowman who worked security on Michael Jackson's Off the Wall. And they said if I asked the wrong question, Chris Nelson was behind the camera, I would get punched by security. Like, in other words, there was a lot of security. What was the most security around you at any time for anything? Well, did Little Richard have security?
No, it was The Last Waltz.
Really?
Yeah.
In what sense was the security?
Well, you couldn't move. I mean, it was a great night, but they had security everywhere. They were, because they were guarding, Scorsese's cameras, his camera guys, the band. Dylan was back there. The history of rock and roll was backstage, and that I'd never seen bigger security. That and Woodstock. But in terms of one person, it's got to be somebody like Liza Minnelli or something.
Were you at the Michael Jackson gig in Vancouver?
I wasn't.
Did you get a chance ever to speak to him?
No.
Did you ever get a chance to speak to Bobby Taylor from Vancouver, who produced the first Jackson 5
Cheech and
LP?
Chong. I got
You got a tour from Cheech and Chong.
That's right.
Free to files.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
Cheech and
I'd
Chong
love to see
talking
that.
about Hendrix and the Smiling Buddha.
I'd kill to see that one.
It does exist somewhere, right?
Yeah. By the way, how is the station?
We are amazing. We are in a new location, the CITR, the student nest. I'm like saying the CITR nest because you walk into the student union building and there is CITR right there, right in the open, right beside the deli. It is amazing. It looks kind of like a dentist's office, etc. But still, it's like totally professional. It is amazing.
It's like a radio station.
It's like a new beginning.
There you go. It's streamed?
www.citr.ca, or you can get the Nardwuar podcast on iTunes.
The album is called Ogopogo Punk. Now, Ogopogo, for some people who are maybe new to Canada or new to the West Coast, Ogopogo is legendary. Up in the Okanagan, but I'm sure that fame is spread far and wide across this great vast nation of ours, from sea to shining sea.
It's kind of like Canada's Loch Ness Monster. I think you lived up there.
I did.
But yeah, the album is called Ogopogo Punk. And I was inspired because a long time ago, Leonard Nimoy, did you ever talk to him?
Here's my Leonard Nimoy story. It was one of the Star Trek films, and I was doing the junket in Los Angeles. There were 50 or 60 of us, one at a time, to go in and talk to him. He answered 3 questions in the first interview and 2 in the second, 1 in the third interview, and went home. He said, I'm going to go get a coffee. He went to get a coffee and never came back because he didn't want to talk about pointy ears. He didn't want to talk about Spock. He didn't want to talk about any of that stuff. He didn't want to talk about his characters or or answer the same questions over and over and over again, and he went home.
Exactly. But he would have talked about the Ogopogo because he had that series called In Search Of. Do you remember In Search Of?
Yes.
Which was amazing. And they looked for the Ogopogo. Now, you were mentioning Leonard Nimoy did the 60 interviews in one day. What's the most interviews you did in one day? Because I heard you did 55 interviews in one day.
Oh, that was
Leonard
different.
did 60.
But that
was it 55 in a day? It's amazing.
What it was we were late in even thinking about covering the Grammys in Los Angeles. So at the last minute, they said, okay, Mulligan, get on a plane. We're going to send your camera down. And you're going to have to talk your way in because there's no media pass for you. We got beside the auditorium, and there was a high cage fence. And we said to the guy through the fence, "We're Olivia Newton-John's camera crew." And the guy laughed like crazy. He said, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Come on in." And we went in and we just set up where they let all of the talent out of their cars. And then later, after the show was done, where they all stood waiting for their limos to show up. And we picked off 55 interviews in one afternoon evening.
But, I mean, when it was eventually aired, do you have an infinite amount to draw from, or did it all get edited down?
Everything was used. All the interviews were 1 or 2 minutes long. And the best one of all, Tony Wanamaker, the cameraman, I heard him say, "Nice boots, Mr. Autry." And Gene Autry walked by with the most gorgeous cowboy boots you've ever seen in your life. And this is the first and last time I ever saw Gene Autry.
Was he wearing a nudie suit as well? Those nudie suits?
I have no idea. So I can't remember. So it's just a fog.
So you've talked to Little Richard and Gene Autry. Did you go any further back than that? Did you ever talk to Bill? Did you ever talk to Sam Phillips?
I talked to Sam Phillips. I talked to Sam Phillips, actually, at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. When they reconstructed his studio at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I said to him at the press conference, and actually it's online, I said, here's the thing. You can put all that stuff down there. You can put the amps and the lights and the walls and everything and the microphones, but you can't recreate what happened between you and Elvis through the window. What happened? He said, you're absolutely right. I told him that it wasn't the room. It was what happened in the room and the spark between Elvis and I. That's what you can't capture. It's the only thing. The only way you're ever going to capture that is listen to the music.
Did he look good? Because the Cramps said he looks like a vampire. He looks the same.
No, he looked great. He was very, very nice.
And you are Terry David
Mulligan. And you are?
Nardwuar the Human Serviette on Roundhouse Radio on your show and kind of hopefully on CITR, my show.
How many times a day do you answer the question, how's your health?
Not enough, actually. It's great. Like, I love that people ask about it, because if they don't ask me, then I think, and I get scared. So I really appreciate all the feedback and people asking. And I would give you a little update. I did go to a doctor over the summer, and he said, see you in a year. Oh. So that made me feel a lot better.
I have a new, I have a gift for you. Learn disco dancing.
Oh, that is amazing. Yeah. This is Learn Disco Dancing. It's fun. It's easy. Great for parties. And a great picture on. I love these instructional records, especially because we may play this on CITR radio, and we can subject the listeners to the American Hustle. Did you once get spat on by a Mohican punk?
Yes, I did. Actually, what I was saying to the camera was, I was talking about John Lennon. It was one of the anniversaries of John Lennon's death. And I was really zoned in on what I wanted to say to the camera, and he gobbed on my leg. I finished the comment and then went running after him. If I'd gotten my hands on him, I think I'd been charged with something, and every once in a while I see him. I still see him on the streets of Vancouver, and I'm always in a car and he's always walking. One of these days, I'm going to be on the street with him.
Is he still a punk, though?
No, he's sort of... No.
So he's sold out, and here you are. You are not afraid to play Mohawks and Dreadlocks by the Evaporators on Roundhouse Radio.
98.3 Vancouver.
And thank you for keeping the Oh God, My Mom's on Channel 10 from 1989. That is the first Nardwuar release from 89. And thank you also for this gift, Learn Disco Dancing.
Have you been able to follow Art Bergman and his releases and the music that he's making these days?
I have indeed. In fact, believe it or not, Art Bergman was the very first interview that I ever did on September the 26th, 1985. And people can go to YouTube and check that out. They can see me in action and Art. And actually, I want to speak to Art because he thanked my high school in the liner notes to his record. So when I finally asked him, you thanked my high school. He said, we thanked everybody else.
I'm going to ask you a serious question here. You've been watching the rock and roll scene and reporting on it and talking about it for a long, long time. Where are we today with the music community in Vancouver? I mean, there's a lot of bands, a lot of artists not getting a lot of play. Is this a golden period? What's going on?
Well, I will refer back to me in high school. I used to do PA announcements to a classroom, and I was happy that the classroom heard it. Now bands have the opportunity for the world to hear what they do. And they might say to me, oh, we only got like 400 likes, and we could have got like 1 million. Like, it's like 400 more people than used to hear the announcements or hear your music. So I think it is a great time. I do remember at Lollapalooza, you looking at me and saying, those are your people. Those are your people. But they aren't really my people, TDM. What did you mean by that? Because what I am saying is there are probably people out there in garages in North Van, etc., playing that I don't know about. I only know a fraction of people. Like, for instance, when I walk into CITR radio, I look at new DJs and I think, oh, I know everything. But then I see them like broadcasting their heartbeat. Yes, their heartbeat. And I'm like, oh, I guess I don't know everything. So things are constantly getting invented. But now it's the best time. In fact, I heard record exec Lior Cohen say now is the best time ever to start a record label.
Because?
I think because you don't have to make CDs. You just have to push a button and the record is out there. And the record label, a lot of the times, gets a 360 deal. So they get a cut of the T-shirts. They get a cut of the concert revenue.
So let me ask you this, the Evaporators. Where can you, besides live gigs that you're doing, will your sales mostly come from online?
Right now, people can hear the record completely on SoundCloud or on Bandcamp.
So there goes the sales.
Or at mitrecords.com. However, they can, or on iTunes, they can buy it on iTunes. However, they can also buy the vinyl version.
Will you go to Neptune?
Yes, that will be at Neptune Records.
Which is where you shot your fantastic video, Mohawks and Dreadlocks.
Exactly.
And you also used the same car in...
I Can't Be Shaved video.
No.
Well, it's amazing. The dune buggy.
Use the same dune buggy in I Can't Be Shaved.
Exactly. And welcome to my castle. Going all the way back to like 92. Yes, we've had the same dune buggy over and over again in all the songs. And I think even for my Much Music specials, I use that dune buggy. It was originally owned by, well, he bought it, Scott, our drummer, and then he sold it to John, our bass player. So it stayed in the family. It's amazing that he knows that. And also a vintage 1966 Westphalia camper is in the video too.
Speaking of vintage, the Drake interview, how did that come about?
Well, believe it or not, I talked to him in 2010, and the way I talked to him in 2010 is a guy gave me, Peter Rosenberg, his phone number, and I just phoned him up, and then 6 years later, he contacted me. Drake contacted me, and then I did the interview. So it was 6 years between interviews, but it all started because I went to the South by Southwest music conference, and I met this guy, Peter Rosenberg, who had Drake's cell phone number. So when Drake came to town, I phoned up Peter. Peter gave me a number, and that's the rest of the story.
What was your best question?
I think he was really floored by DJ Screwed. Like, for instance, I really love this reaction of Drake. For instance, he talked about DJ Screw, how he had, DJ Screw was like a legendary Houston rapper that like slowed music down. And he also had a tape store, DJ Screw's Records and Tapes. And Drake created the complete store as his on-stage prop. Like, like Neil Young, it's like giant Marshall amps. Drake had the complete store on stage as his prop. That was amazing. That I did not know.
That's when you got, that's dough well spent. By the way, do you do Christmas specials?
I have written a few songs for Mint Records, and in case people want to get this record, they can check out Mint Records. Who are you? Who are you? A few Christmas songs. Who are you? Who are you? Santa! That was the Evaporators. That was kind of it.
Okay.
I will refer actually to Megan Barnes and David Carswell because they have an amazing repertoire of Christmas tunes that you can get again on the Mint Records.
How many rappers have you interviewed?
Quite a few.
Because you're specializing.
Actually, how many have you interviewed? Terry Mulligan.
Very few, if any.
How many boots are you on? Like, for instance, like people might have you come across your voice. Oh, that's my voice. Like you were on quite a few bootlegs introducing people.
Oh, actually, you know what? Yes,
I mean, records like uncredited Terry David Mulligan.
The Doors live in Vancouver.
1970.
Whatever.
Oh, in what capacity?
Yeah,
screaming or actually introducing?
No, I'm introducing. Yeah, that's when John Tanner and I went up at the end of the show and said, "Hey, let's get another tune. What do you say?" And their manager went out of there because their boys were in the car and they were leaving. And the manager was furious. He said, "That's going to cost you $10,000." And he got the guys out to come up. He got out of the car and got them back on stage to do one more song. It was a bad move from John and I.
So people can check out the Doors and hear Terry David Mulligan in action.
And the other one is the concert for Enchitka, the start of Greenpeace. That concert with Joni Mitchell, Bill Henderson and Chilliwack were there, James Taylor, Phil Oakes. I was the MC for that, and that was the first time ever anybody ever used the term Greenpeace.
You were the first person to use the term?
No, it was the organizers. But that's the first night, the first time I ever heard it come out of a speaker system. And that money went to buy the fish boat that they took up to Amchitka to stop the nuclear testing.
In 1970, you also did the Vancouver Pop Festival. Was that dangerous? The Vancouver Pop Festival. Like there were a lot of...
I don't remember danger. I remember people throwing things, but that's about it.
In what respect? Like why were people throwing stuff? Like
Vancouver
Vancouver
it was stupid and stoned?
Who was there? What do you remember about that aside from the throwing?
I don't remember. I try to forget it.
But that is not immortalized on
No.
boots.
Do we know any of the bands?
What was your relationship with the Guess Who? Because around 1970, 71, they were hitting. They were hitting big. Because at first they did the Guess Who Blues, which were What did you react to, like, them dissing you? You're good friends.
I
Do you laugh?
No, I couldn't care less. And we remained friends over the years. It was I spent my time in Regina.
And the Checker Lads. Do you remember the Checker Lads? That we covered the Evaporators.
Yes.
The Checker Lads, Baby Send For Me, a 1960s garage nugget. What do you remember? You don't remember?
I can barely remember.
Do you remember anything about the local bands?
No. No, I can't remember anything but the local band. I remember the Guess Who being the one band that came in and just rocked my socks. I just loved it. And here's the thing, Nard. I had one of the gigs that I had was to MC at the Fourth Dimension Coffee House in Regina.
The Zombies.
Okay, but no, that was Calgary. But the deal is, the Fourth Dimension Coffee House was a circuit. Then you could play
Joni Mitchell.
Yeah, you could play 3 or 4 or 5 different cities, Fourth Dimension Coffee, which means they could book bigger acts. Well, they got Chuck and Joni Mitchell. But the very first time the Guess Who ever had Burton on stage with them was at the Fourth Dimension Coffee House in Regina, and I taped the whole show. And I held that tape, never listened to it. I held on to it for years and years and years. And then one day, my kids and my wife sold that box of tapes to somebody at a garage sale at our house. Included in there was every press conference that the Beatles did on that first tour. I was the guy that recorded it at the station, and I held onto the master tapes. And they all went to somebody.
Have they turned up on bootlegs?
I have no idea.
Oh, no.
I know.
And you are Terry David Mulligan.
Do you have another question? You got to go up big now.
Well, I was curious. After me, you were having Red Robinson. He hired you.
Yeah.
Red Robinson hired you.
He did.
John Lennon famously told Red Robinson to fuck off.
Yep.
Have you been told fuck off by anybody? Like, if any artist told you to like, for instance, I remember Jay Myers, who worked for Much Music.
Love Jay.
He flew all the way, I think, to Iceland to interview the guys, I think, from Blur. And I think the guys from Blur weren't into it. And Jay said, "You weren't into it?" Well, I guess so. Okay, well, goodbye. And then it was like 2 minutes, and then they left, and then they flew home. Did you have that experience? Did anybody tell you to F off?
Yes.
Or did you fly a whole
No.
and
I was at the Stein Valley. Outside of Vancouver, trying to save the last unlogged wilderness in the area, and everybody was there. It was fantastic. It was a wonderful event, and one of the headliners was Ian Tyson, and I walked up to him on the side of the stage and said, "Could I ask you a couple of questions?" And he said, "Why the hell would I want to talk to you?"
Well, how did people remember you? Did people remember you? Like, I know that Tommy Chong has told many stories, like, Michael Jackson's dad did not remember me. He didn't remember me. Or Michael Jackson didn't remember me. Or Ted Nugent didn't remember me. Like, how did people remember you? Did people not remember you? Like, did you interview a person several times and they still didn't know who you were?
They do. It's like you. If people see you on the street, or they'll see you in a store, and they'll look at you and they'll try to figure out where do I know that? And sometimes they'll say to me, you're Fred Latrimo. No, I'm not. You're Norm Groman. No, I'm not. No.
Did you ever try to convince anybody that you interviewed him? I remember seeing Slayer at the airport and running up to them and go, "I talked to you 15 years ago." And they were like, yeah. Like, they didn't remember it. Did you ever try to convince anybody that you interviewed him?
No, I don't have that. I don't have that thing in me. That I don't have that chemistry in my body.
Like, your family didn't say, "Oh, that's cool. You talked to Slayer. Can we meet them?" And then
this is the only time I ever talk about this stuff. This is the only time I ever talk about it, is when you're in the room with me. Other than that, it's just it's all just fading. And I'm pretty good with this.
How old are you now, Terry?
I will be 75 June the 30th.
How long have you been doing it? Because I know you were a Mountie.
I was a Mountie.
How long have you been doing it?
I was a Mountie from 19 to 20, 21, 22, 23. And then I've been doing radio ever since. And I started radio in just end of 64, early 65 in Red Deer.
Did you ever run into Peter Mansbridge? Because he was around the same time.
No, He
began as the announcer at the airport.
No, I gave him an award at the Geminis or the Genies or whatever they were called back then. And I handed him the award, and I stepped back so he could make his acceptance speech. And he said, "Wow, I just met Terry David Mulligan." I have no idea that that what I was doing in the West Coast would even be seen in Toronto. So for me to see, this was in Ottawa or Toronto or something. So it was quite remarkable, and that's the only time I ever saw Peter.
Have you witnessed moments where people don't realize it is a moment? Like I saw Beck accept an award from the Reunited Kiss. The Reunited Kiss, all in makeup. And Beck did not react at all. Have you seen that at all? Like somebody meeting somebody and not realizing it's kind of like, here's Beck meeting the Reunited Kiss. Because that was a big deal.
Here's the deal that you will identify with this. For years and years and years, someone would say, "Hey, I met you on the ferry going to Bowen Island," and I go, "Nice to meet you. Nice to see you again." And then and it's hollow and it's false and it's phony. I actually made a decision early on in my life just to say, I can't remember. I'm sorry. What's your name again? And then try to reestablish as opposed to just bullshitting them, right?
But I'm talking about the Reunited Kiss in makeup.
Oh, yeah.
And Beck did not acknowledge that it was like the Reunited Kiss. Amazing. First time since Unmasked, giving him an actual reward. Have you witnessed a moment from a side, like two people looking on?
I don't know where you're going with this. I think, how's your medicine?
Well, actually, I'm off completely. I'm pretty much off the medicine. I would, back to Terry Mulligan.
I'm going to wrap this up in a second. We're going to go up big boffo stuff, okay?
Okay, go ahead.
See, you can't nod on radio. It's not going to work. You have one more question? Anything?
No, go ahead. Okay. I will hit you with another one.
Thank you. Well, no, I'm going to wrap it up. You have to give me your last question.
Okay, well, the last question is you and Nirvana. You never talked to Nirvana until the funeral. Could you explain?
Well, I never.
The funeral.
The funeral. No, you and I were at the same gig. The Peony Agrodome. Was it the Agrodome?
Yes.
You're nodding again on radio.
Yeah, the Peony Forum.
Forum.
Which actually has a lot of history. What do you remember seeing there?
Well, I can't.
The Rolling Stones.
Whatever. But
Slipknot.
Whatever. But no, actually, I saw. Not Slipknot.
They did play there.
Did they?
Yeah.
Okay. I do remember the Fleetwood Mac, the original Fleetwood Mac at the Agrodome. I love not the Agrodome. What was the little one? Is it the Forum? Was the long and narrow one?
The Forum was about 5,000 people.
No, but
the Agrodome smelled.
What was the long and narrow one?
I think that was a Forum
where we saw Roxy Roller and Brian Adams.
I don't go that far back.
Okay, fine. Here's
how dare you mention his name? I was afraid that he would come up. We won't say anymore.
Okay, and basically, Nirvana was playing, and probably you at your instigation, saying you should be there. You got to be there. You got to be. No, it was my daughter. And you got into the interview because you had done your homework and they knew you and you had talked your way in. And I just took the rejection and went home. I didn't get my interview.
Oh, I waited for 2 days and got the interview. Yeah. But you did the same sort of thing in L.A. at the Grammys. You kind of like hang out beside the venue and then you got in. I did the exact same Terry Mulligan technique, which I learned from Grant Lawrence of the band The Smugglers at Bellevue Avenue in West Van.
He's an icon now.
And they are reuniting. The Smugglers are reuniting in January for a gig. And I learned arrive early at the gig, really early at the gig, and you will get everything you want.
So there's a new Evaporators album out there called Ogopogo Punk. It's out there now.
Featuring Nick Thomas, who is the brother of Jackie Thomas, who did TDM, Terry Mulligan's book, Mulligan Stew.
You have a choice between playing, is it I Can't Be Shaved? Okay. Or the first track on the disco record.
Probably will play both, but I would say I Can't Be Shaved. And shout out to Marco at Uptown Barbers, where we shot the video by Jason Margolis, directed by Jason Margolis. And then we went up the street to Neptune Records and we shot the Mohawks and Dreadlocks video.
Do you have a blog?
Nardwuar.com has all the information.
You have a website?
All the links are there, nardwuar.com. And people can check out the Evaporators album for free. The best time now to start a record label on SoundCloud or on Bandcamp or at nardwuar.com.
Let's do it together.
Doot,
doot, doot, doot, doot, doot.
Ogopogo Punk!
Hear it. I don't know if I should fear it. I don't know if I have the heart for it. Take away that blade, I can't be shaved.
His name is Nardwuar, the human serviette. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. This is Mulligan Stew. I'm Terry David Mulligan, and we are taking baby steps here, my friends. There's a lot of interviews to go, lots. We will talk a lot about music. We'll talk about food, wine, and film, movies, because those are the roads I travel and have traveled, and we just thought the confluence of podcasts and Mulligan Stew works for us. The next Mulligan Stew is with one of the great singer-songwriters in all of popular music, Robbie Robertson, a young man from the Six Nations Reserve in Ontario. It picks up a guitar and starts to play like he was meant to do it, like it was a natural thing. He comes to the attention of Ronnie Hawkins, a Southerner who's playing rock and roll and keeping his head above the water in Toronto, doing great work. He takes them through the Delta, the Southland, the legendary birthplace of the blues. They go to school and all of that. And then they become the band. And then they become the band behind Bob Dylan. And they tour the world. And the band then has their own career that ends with The Last Waltz, which is the last place I saw Robbie Robertson. And I'm going to ask Robbie over the course of these next podcasts about 3 songs that he wrote: The Wait, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, and Up on Cripple Creek. How did he write them? How did they come to him? And we will over the next couple of podcasts on Mulligan Stew.